Yes, if you haven't watched part 1, go check it out. Let's get into part 2. So in the last tutorial, we focused mainly on getting a scene set up with basic lighting and a few tricks using our HDRI as well as some displacement. Now in today's video, we're going to be focusing on a bit more advanced topics like shadows, reflection, and volumetrics. Play the intro. By the end of this tutorial, we'll learn how to set up this scene that you're seeing right now inside of Eevee. Now, before we get into that part, we need to learn some fundamentals. Now, let's start with reflection. Reflections inside of Eevee have been a bit lackluster in the previous versions, but in 4.2, it has been improved drastically. So let's see how to set up a basic glass material using the newest version. Now, to create a glass material, we need to add it an object, right? So I'm gonna create a sphere by pressing Shift A and maybe smoothing it out as well. Then I'm gonna switch over into the shading tab and jump into look tab because I don't have any environment textures inside of the render view. And I'm gonna create a new material and I'm gonna call it glass. And instead of using the principal BSDF, I'm just gonna use the glass shader, attach it to our material out. This is fine, but we can improve it. To do that, all you have to do is go down inside of your material property all the way down and enable ray traced transmission and set the thickness from sphere to slab. You can see there is a little bit of change, but not a lot. That is because we haven't turned on ray tracing. Now if we switch over into render view and add an environment texture, you can see we are getting a realistic glass material. So whenever you're creating any sort of bottles or any sort of glass objects inside of your scene, make sure you apply these settings to your glass material to get the perfect output. Now moving on to volumetrics. Now for the people who don't know what volumetrics is, well, volumetrics is used to mainly approximate effects like fog or God rays. So in this example, we are going to recreate this scene where I have a volumetric object setup that gives us real-time God rays. As you can see, I'm able to change the direction of the sun and it is affecting the scene in real time. So let's set that up. Now to first do that, we need a box or a room to add our object and to cast our God rays. So I'll create a basic cube. Now let's set up our lighting. Let's go into render view. It's completely dark. Add a sunlight. Now you can see it is automatically affecting our room even though it is outside and this room has a roof. That is because we haven't enabled shadows. Now if we rotate sunlight, you can see the light being cast through that hole that we created earlier. The only place that is getting lit is the place where the light is falling. The rest of the room is in darkness. Now to change that, let's turn on our favorite button inside of Blender, that is ray tracing. As soon as I turn it on, you can see the difference. Okay, so we have set up our sunlight. Now let's add our volumetrics. I'll basically just add a cube and scale it according to the size of the room so that it basically encapsulates the whole room inside that volumetric cube. Now I'll move into shading, add a new material. Now this is where we change things. We'll delete the principal BSDF and we'll add a volume scatter node. Now instead of connecting it to our surface, we'll connect it to our volume because this is a volume object. And if we go inside our room, you can see the effect actually working, but the amount of fog is a bit high for my liking. So I'm just gonna select it and set it to around 0.2. Now if I rotate, we are getting these God rays, beautiful God rays effect in real time. You can see as I'm changing the direction of the sunlight, it is being updated. It is a bit buggy, I would say, because you can see the number of grains on the screen. That is because of ray tracing. It is approximating the light to its best extent, but the only source of light in this scene is sunlight. So it is a bit hard to apply to all surrounding area. That is why we are getting these grainy effects. Now you can actually change that by adding another light source, maybe a point light or maybe an area light. Okay, so we've learned about volumetrics, we've learned about reflections. Now let's use what we've learned inside of a scene. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to recreate this entire scene with the things that we learned earlier. As you can see, the assets that we are using in this scene are from Sketchfab. I'll link them in the description down below, so make sure you go check them out. I've downloaded this cathedral asset and our wine platter asset, and you can see if I turn on the overlays, I've set the camera with a really high focal length. You can see it is around 600. That is because I want to get this nice sort of bokeh effect in the background, as well as a subject to focus on. Now the main issue I faced while using these assets was the glass material that came with the asset was okay, but it was not suitable for this scene. So what I did was create my own glass material. So basically what we did earlier, add a glass shader, and I've added a bit of bump to it as well, so that feels or looks more realistic. As you can see, if I increase the strength, it may be subtle, but in the overall picture it contributes to it. So I added that. Now I did the same for the glass material as well. Now for lighting this whole scene, I have used a different approach by using add-on. Now to enable this add-on, all you have to do is go into edit, preference, go into get extensions, and type in lighting. Now this will basically allow you to create 3-point lighting for whichever object you select. So if I were to select this glass over here and go into light and select this 3-point lighting option, you can see it is adding 3 lights automatically. It is adding a fill light, a key light, and a backlight. Okay, I'm just going to delete it and I'll show you what I did for the bottle. So this one is a key light, so this will affect the front side of the bottle. Now for the other 2 lights, we have the backlight. So this will allow you to get this nice sort of rim light, feels like it belongs in the scene. Then we have a fill light so that it feels like the scene is not that dark. Now let's take a render of this image, and you can see we are getting a really good result, but I feel like we can improve it. Now, what I didn't cover in this tutorial and what I'm going to cover in the next tutorial is the compositor. So I've added a few nodes. Don't get confused. I'll explain these nodes in the next tutorial. So if I connect these nodes, you can see we are getting a much more realistic result. So this is what we are going to learn in the next tutorial. So thanks again for watching part 2 of our 3-part series. So the next part is going to be the final part. I'm going to cover a lot of ground as well. So make sure you subscribe and click the bell notification to get notified whenever we post a new video. Until then,